If you have a few questions on all of these pictures you've seen around here, we'll try to answer them as we go through the presentation. But I'll get harder to start this other slideshow and we'll get started.
I love it. Now, where's your dad? Hi, Larry. Little Larry. The old girls had a crush on little Larry. One of them called me the other day. I told you, didn't I? Here you go. No. I don't know how to use it. Yeah, right. You don't have to. I didn't wear my hair because I couldn't get that.
Is this seat go around? No, you have
Folks, we're going to open with the word of prayer, so I'm going to ask Silent if you'll lead us in the word of prayer as we get started here this evening.
Testing. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on. All right. All right, well, I'm glad for everybody that showed up. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear myself very well. I'm deaf in one ear and can't hear out the other. Guess what? That's what happens when you get my age. Anyway, I'm glad for everybody that came out, and I hope you will enjoy a little bit of the Stuarts Draft history. And so let's have a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for everyone that came out, and just bless this meeting. Bless Randall, bless Larry. And I just pray that we would learn something here, something good that you're wanting to teach us. Just thank you so much for the community that we could grow up in, and thank you for the many blessings that we've had. God, we live in such a wonderful country, and right now it's just on my mind. I don't know why, but I just think we really need to pray for Israel. There's some really awful things happening over there. I hear that they have declared war on Hamas, and it's not good. It's been 75 years since that happened, and I don't know where we come in on all this, but I just pray that your will would be done and that you would give us peace, and especially be with those people over there. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So Silent, Larry, and I are going to try to make a little short presentation here on the history of Stuarts Draft. Most of this has occurred in our lifetime, that there's a lot of things that we have gotten information on or done some research on and found out about Stuarts Draft. So we'll get started. Stuarts Draft came into being back really in 1749 when Thomas Stuart was given some land. He was deeded some land from his father, Archibald Stuart. That's where the name Stuarts came from. That was the Stuarts' land. Now, as far as the word draft is concerned, there's all kinds of things as to why. And, wait a minute.
The speaker keeps going in and out.
Yeah, wait a minute. Okay, now we got it. Anyway, it's never really clearly been understood about draft. Draft really, all of us know there's a constant breeze that blows through Stuarts Draft. And that's where the draft comes from in most ways of thinking. However, there's also a land draft. And some folks say that the land draft is where the word draft came from. More recently, an individual said that there were two Stuarts in Virginia. A Stuart, Virginia, and Stuarts, Virginia. And the folks in D.C. decided there was too much mix-up with the two names, so they came to Stuarts Draft and said, you got to change your name. And so that's when we added draft to the name. That was from Mr. J.H. Weaver, passed that along. And he says that's the reason Stuarts is called Stuarts Draft. So anyway, whatever, we've got a number of reasons as to why we're Stuarts Draft. So we'll continue on. It's not going to the next one. There you see the information here about what Mr. Weaver had said. And then some of the original landowners, aside from the Stuarts, were the Pattons, Blacks, Davidsons, Moffats, Longs, Johnsons, McClures, Christians, Bells, Churchmans, and the Alexanders. Dr. Alexander Long, there's a memorial plaque to Dr. Alexander Long in Stuarts Draft. Does anybody know where Dr. Alexander Long's memorial plaque is? Hold on, we'll tell you after a while. He was a mason, and he lived on a farm here in Stuarts Draft, grew up on a farm in Stuarts Draft, and the Masons decided, since he was the first Grand Marshal, I believe it was, this side of the mountains, from here to the Mississippi River, as far as Augusta County extended, really. But anyway, he was the first one to understand that George Washington came from Mount Vernon up and actually appointed him this Grand Marshal, or whatever the title was at that time, to this position. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the farm that he grew up on. The first school in Stuarts Draft was a building in Barterbrook, located 4 miles, of course, from the present building, 4 miles towards Fishersville. But it was probably prior to the exact date of its establishment, not known, prior to the Civil War. And this was later replaced by a one-room school in the grove behind present Finley Memorial Church. Larry, you got anything to add to that? There's a picture of the early school.
The back part of that is still standing. The addition on the back, it's on Richard Corin's land, and that is his tool shed. But they moved it just across the fence from Finley over to what was Pilson Corin's property.
First physician, Dr. James Watson, University of Virginia. Married Mary Catherine Alexander in 1856. Charged $1.50 per visit. Delivered white babies for $10. Delivered Negro babies for $5. Don't accuse me of being prejudiced or anything. I'm just recruiting from a history book. In 1837, we got a post office. Post office was what I refer to as downtown Stuarts Draft Avenue. We'll talk about that, and I'll show you some pictures of that a little bit later on. Middle 1800s, the landowners went twice a year over the Howardsville Turnpike to Scottsville. Your trip required about a week. You can imagine going basically out 6'8", hitting 6'10", going right straight across the Sharonda, going up to the top of the mountain and over to Howardsville. 1882, the Shenandoah Valley Railroad arrived. Later became the N&W. McChesney Store, 1886. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The mill, blacksmith shops, hardware store, Dodge Inn, depot, post office. All of these things came into being about 1886. Here's an aerial view of Stuarts Draft. I'll try to point out a few things to you. Here's the railroad running right through here. You can see the old mill standing here. This is Draft Avenue, or what we refer to as Main Street. Up here, running up through here, is 340. This picture was probably taken somewhere in the 50s, 60s time frame. You don't see a lot of houses around. And I'll show you some other pictures a little bit later on. I talked about the McChesney Store. This was a picture of this was a postcard of the McChesney Store. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner here, right here, this is a railroad track. This house right here is the first house on the right as you cross the railroad track. Now, can you imagine a store sitting between the railroad track and that house? How close to the railroad track it was? But that was one of the first stores. That was one of the first stores. Here's the Stuarts Draft Mill as it was in 1893. That mill burned and was later rebuilt, and we'll talk about that as we get on into the presentation. The mill is one of the reasons Larry and I's grandparents were in this area. This is a 1893 was the chair, barrel, and tomato factories were here. And here's a picture of the Dodge house. This was the Mountain View house, it was called at that time, and this was Dr. Dodge had this particular house. This is the N&W Railroad Station, Stuarts Draft. This is Harbaugh's store. That building that you can see the word furniture on is still standing. It's on Wayne Avenue. Many of you may drive by there and see it on occasions. This is another store in Stuarts Draft, a general merchandise store at that time. This store has burned. It was located on Wayne Avenue, I think, too. Weaver Produce House. Mr. Weaver, as a young man, came into Stuarts Draft, carried his lunch, and he was talking about starting a business. And people were a little leery of here 18, 19-year-old boy wanting to start a business. But anyway, he started a business. This particular building was located on what's now Wayne Avenue. He started a business, and what he would do, when he would buy chickens from a local farmer and keep them, and then he would sell them out on the weekends to the people so they could do their chicken lunches or for Sunday, or chicken their dinners, have chicken for dinner. They didn't have to go out on the farm, kill their own chickens, and have a meal. They could go to his store, buy the chicken there, then they could take a chicken home and dress it, have their own meal. He started the store. I understand the first month he only sold 6 chickens, but he slept under the counter, I understand, in the store during that period of time. He eventually, there's another picture of the produce store. You can see the chickens loaded on the buggy there. This is the Model T sitting there in front of the Weaver produce store. A lot of these pictures came from the Weaver family. Then here we see the Philly Memorial Presbyterian Church. This is this was a church between 1891 and 1929. Most of these pictures of the churches and things, you can go to the church's website and find the history of the church on their website. This is the Calvary United Methodist Church. This is in their archives and history.
And most of that building's still standing, right?
Yeah, most of that church is still standing. This is the Stuarts Draft Baptist Church. On July the 12th, 1895, the church was dedicated. The congregation was actually formed in 1894, but the church was dedicated in 1895. If you want to know a little bit more about the church, you can visit our website. We got some information on the history on our website. And I'm going to let Larry tell you a little bit about this warehouse. This is C.H. Corn General Store and Warehouse. So I'll let Larry talk a little bit.
I've got one.
You've got one.
If I can get it on. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. C.H. Corn General Store and Warehouse, that building still stands. It's the building right at the railroad on the right. We grew up knowing it as Evers Warehouse. C.H. Corn was my great-grandfather, and he later, well, if you look at the building, it says C.H. Corn's son. Son's my granddad. While I'm talking about this and the Corn family, and Randall mentioned something a moment ago, C.H. Corn owned the mill that burned. And when he rebuilt the mill, he hired Randall and my granddaddy on our mother's side to come and rebuild the mill, and that's where my mom and dad met. And but you know, Granddaddy Forbes came in and was the miller there. C.H. owned a lot of property. And C.H. did something that if he had known it he would turn over in his grave today. He had 5 sons and 5 daughters. And at his death, he left each son either a business or a farm. But they had to raise enough money to give one of their sisters $10,000. And the Depression hit, and they all went broke. He caused all of his sons to go broke. And my dad lived long enough, or was young enough, that he remembered Granddaddy C.H., and Daddy always referred to him as the old bird. So he must have been quite a character. And by the way, he was Cornelius Henry. And his wife came from, down, Verona area, I can't even think of it.
Laurel Hill.
Laurel Hill, yes. Laurel Hill is where his wife came from, and she was a welder, and her name was Cordelia. So it was Cornelius and Cordelia. And while I'm talking about family, because of her coming from Laurel Hill, the Stuarts Baptist Church was born from the Laurel Hill Baptist Church. But that's where the seed started and was developed because of great grandmother.
Yes,
being.
he didn't want to travel to Verona Church all the time.
Yeah, exactly right. And anyway,
Mention the
that's
nursery.
the
Mention the
story of
apples.
the corn warehouse.
Mention the nursery. He sold apple trees.
Oh, yes. Granddaddy's family came from Mississippi, and I haven't been able to find out a whole lot about the family that was in Mississippi. His father, Cornelius's father, was named John. They had 5,000 acre plantation in Mississippi, and they raised cotton. And John died at a young age. And his wife was Jane. And I do not know Jane's maiden name, but Jane was originally from Virginia. And at John's death, she sold the plantation and moved back to Virginia, and that's when CH came with her. And I don't know anything about CH's siblings. I don't know whatever happened there, whether there were even more of them or not. But anyway, Granddaddy CH was a salesman for Stark Brothers Nursery. And back in those days, and actually in our lifetime, Stuarts Draft area was loaded with orchards. On the hill where the Amish church is, that was orchard. Where Sylvan Drive is, where Randall and Mildred lived, that was orchards. They were everywhere. Our farm was all orchards. And Granddaddy did that. And then in as the orchards grew and there was an abundance of apples, he was an apple broker. And he shipped apples all over the country. Matter of fact, one of the biggest places he shipped was New Jersey. And at the time, there was a railroad that went north-south. And if you look real close, you can still see the bed of it, of that railroad. 81 followed it. Now, if you know where the Judge Moffett farm is, there's a rock bridge that was built that the railroad crossed. But Barterbrook is where they loaded the apples to be shipped. And
So that was a railroad bridge?
that was railroad
One where you
bridge.
see Interstate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says 1893 or something like that.
And if you follow Gary, it goes, you can see the bed all the way up to the Spotswood area.
Really?
81 pretty much followed it.
Actually, I think you can see it in Fairfield as well.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry?
I say you can see the railroad bed in Fairfield as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Hey, question. The Old Order Amish Church, what was the name of that orchard?
I'm sorry?
The Old Order Amish Church?
I have no idea.
Okay, I was just curious.
I'm sorry, Simon.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a Virginia apple company was here. That was Horseshoe Circle area. There's still some orchard there.
Yeah.
Jeff, yes.
About that railroad on the west side of the valley, that was eventually the Baltimore and Ohio Shenandoah Valley line. It comes down from Harper's Ferry through Harrisonburg, through across that stone bridge. They stopped laying track at Lexington, but they planned to go further south as far as Salem at least. I have seen a culvert that they had built at Salem. In 1942, they decided it was not profitable to be running a railroad with an average of 1 car a day. The price of scrap iron was up, so they abandoned the line south of Stanton. And it's just a roadbed now.
Thank you, Jeff. Now I'll make a comment on what Jeff just did. This is the way we have found out things through this program, and it was, the three of us just got together by accident. And by the way, we weren't the only ones. Your daddy was involved, P.D. Evers was involved, Jack Blackett was involved, Gene Kane was involved, and Mike Twitchell was involved. But it just happened. And the more we get into it, the more we learn. And thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Jeff. 1895, Fishersville, Barterbrook, and Stuarts Draft Telephone Company were organized. First phones were put in service in 1897. 1906, People's Bank was established. And you can see here from a picture that was taken in the early 50s, that building is still there. More recently, Frankie Corner had a lawyer's office there. Then there's an extension that had been added to it. And they have gone in and done a lot of scraping of the exterior of that building and repainted it white, which was what it was when I was growing up. If you look closely at that building, the upper part of that building, above the windows on up, is a different type of brick than what's in the lower portion. If you're driving by that building sometime, take a notice. You will see that there's really smaller brick, what we think of as a brick today, in the upper portion. The lower portion is the heavier block. That's because the bank burned. The top of it burned off and they had to redo it. So that's why that's different.
Before you change your picture, can I tell the story?
Sure. Tell the
Okay.
story.
So this was a People's Bank that got robbed on Halloween Day in 1939 of all the money they had. Now you go ahead and take it from there.
We'll cover the story about the Halloween bank robbery in October the 31st, 1939. I don't know whether, I don't have any more pictures there. But anyway, finish that story. Mr. Bussey, any of you may remember Billy Bussey, Alice Bussey, their dad was the banker. He ran the bank. Heber Shelton was a clerk. And it so happened that Ms. Dale Irvin was in the bank at that particular point in time. I looked it up, I think October 31st and 39 was on a Friday. I'm not 100% sure of that. But anyways, the story is told that she had some money from the church that she was deposited in the bank there at that particular point in time. When these robbers came in, and what did they do? They took all the money they had, they locked them in the vault. Now you have to remember, a 1939 vault is a little bit different than a vault today. There is no ventilation in there. There's no air conditioning, there's no heat. And it is soundproof and it's not on any time schedule or anything. The only way to get in it is through a combination. Who knew the combination? Mr. Bussey. He's locked inside the bank. What did they do? There was nobody in the bank at the time. And so they had to depend on somebody else coming in. Well, I think it was Mr. Weaver that finally ended up in the bank and he wondered why nobody was around. And then he heard a faint cry or a holler, somebody's hollering to let him out. And so he went and realized that they were locked up in the vault. And through a series of, they said Mr. Bussey yelled out the combination, and after Mr. Weaver tried several times, he was able to get the combination correct and get it open. But you have to remember, here they were in a confined space, no air. Their air was continually being depleted by them breathing. And so he was able to get them out. They caught the bank robbers, understand, that weekend, someplace in Roanoke. So hey, they didn't get away with their little.
And I presume the robbers were somewhere out of town.
Yeah, they were out of town. Yeah, out of town guys. And why they picked Halloween, we don't know. But anyway,
That was kind of weird.
yeah, it was kind of weird. Here you see Main Street in 1908. You can see most of the buildings are wooden buildings at this time. Here's the bank robbery information, 1942, Thanksgiving Day fire broke out. Pretty much destroyed a lot of the downtown area. August of 16, courts bill, the Stuarts Draft bill burned. That was in 1916. The bill was rebuilt, and as Larry said, our grandfather ended up being here when the mill was rebuilt. September the 18th, the tomato cannery burned and was never rebuilt. Anybody have any idea where the tomato cannery was?
All right, that very first picture you showed, an aerial photo, I wanted you to go back to that and point some things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyhow, maybe you don't want to do that right now.
Yeah, we'll go back to that. We'll go back to that thing when we get to the question and answer period. We'll go back to that photo and show that one. But yeah, the tomato cannery, alongside the railroad track, if you're going from here to the draft, cross the railroad track, before you get to the railroad track, or after you cross the railroad track, if you look up to the right, that's where the tomato factory was. Anybody know where Edmund Hogson used to live? That's where it was. The foundations for the tomato factory, some of them is still there. So that's where the tomato factory was. John Kane has been doing a little research on the tomato factory, trying to get some pictures and all from it, from a company that he thinks really was owner of that particular factory. He has not been able to get in touch with them yet, but anyway, hopefully we'll get some pictures one of these days. May the 12th, the fire broke out in James Weaver Produce House, spread to a store operated by Sam Shaner and a home occupied by Mr. and Ms. Herb Harris. Little interesting story about that fire. When the fire broke out, there was a big rig that hung outside the firehouse that had been supposedly supplied by the railroad, that was hit with an axe or a big sledgehammer to sound the alarm. And you can see that ring on display at the current firehouse. But anyway, it seems that Mr. Harris took out after the fire occurred. He was going to, sound the alarm. He took the axe, was headed towards the alarm to sound the alarm. Well, somebody else saw him running, thought he was the one that set the fire. So they took out after him. Well, lo and behold, they finally got that straightened out, and the home did burn. The home occupied by Ms. Herbert Harris burned. May the 22nd, the Weaver Hatchery and Produce House burned again, and so they moved to a new location at that time. This is a fire, 1930, June the 4th, 1930, that pretty much destroyed all of Stuarts Draft. This is basically the intersection of Wayne Avenue and what we know as Draft Avenue now, or we refer to it as Main Street in Stuarts Draft. You can see this building right here, still standing on Wayne Avenue. Whoops. That building's the only one that's still standing. It didn't burn. The Harbaugh store was saved, but everything else was destroyed on that corner, and everything then had to be rebuilt. There was a mill as it was rebuilt. This is probably a 1950s picture where the mill was rebuilt. Basically, you can determine where that was because of the silos that are still standing. The rest of the mill, the old building has been torn down and another building erected there. This is Mountain Lake. Dr. Dodge owned Mountain Lake. This is now known as, was known as Shenandoah Acres, and what's the new name for it now? I done forgot.
Sun Retreat.
Sun Retreat, that's right. Fun Retreat. Dr. Dodge saw to it that water got piped into the mountain, piped into Stuarts Draft. So we see that we had had a couple fire hydrants and some running water in Stuarts Draft because of him. But on Mountain Lake, Mr. R.A. Blackland purchased the lake in 1935. And the prospectus that was issued by Dr. Dodge had this information on it. There were 4,000 apple trees of the best varieties on that property. There were peaches, pears, grapes, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, huckleberries. 4 to 5 rail cars of cranberries grown here. $2,000 sales last year. That would have been in 1934 that he had sold 4 to 5 rail cars. Now I'm talking about railroad cars now. Cranberries were shipped out of here. And there was a 10% gate fee for swimming in the lake, and it was put in parentheses on the prospectus that was entirely too cheap. Most people don't realize that cranberries weren't grown in the Stuarts Draft area. There is a subdivision called Cranberry Hills. A lot of you know where that is. I have been told, and I have not gone up there and plodded around in some of the bogs that are up there around that area, but I understand there's still some cranberry bushes around up there that you can see them.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
Can I tell you the story that Jack Black had told us about Shadow Acres?
Sure.
When Jack's dad bought Shadow Acres, what was that, a little over 200 acres?
I forget.
Had
his name.
11 orchards on it, and of course the cranberry bog. And I don't know how long he had owned it at this point, but there was some questionable character that lived next to the property there. And one evening, the sheriff showed up at Jack's dad's house, and he said, "You're under arrest. You've been making moonshine. We found your still." And they took him off to jail. And Jack said that was really hard to explain to the sheriff's department that that wasn't his still, because 99% of it was on Shadow Acres property. Turned out it was a questionable neighbor that was making moonshine and had put the still on Shadow Acres, so he wouldn't look like he was the one who was making it.
Here's the first house that the Blackers lived in when they moved to Shadow Acres. You can see that little cottage is still there. It's on the right as you're going up the driveway or up past the lake. It's still there. And I remember Jack telling the story when it rained real hard, the water would run down off of the road, the dirt road there, down into the front of the house and into the house there. This is a picture postcard of aerial view of the lake in the 50s. Now, there's a drive-in theater. This is a parking lot taken from the parking lot of Shadow Acres looking towards the theater. How many people knew there was a drive-in theater in Stuarts Draft? Few people do. Go ahead, Simon.
People. So we was down at the nursing home, and I said, "Can I say something?" I said, I asked my mom, I said, "Did you know that Stuarts Draft once had a drive-in theater?" She said, "No. And if we did, we wouldn't have been allowed to see it anyhow."
This is Child's Store, one of the early stores in Stuarts Draft. This is Mitchell Funeral Home. This building is still standing. It's at the intersection of Flory Avenue and Draft Avenue. Building is still there. It's been a number of different things, but it was Mitchell's Funeral Home for a number of years. And you can see the brick in this building is the same brick that's in the bank building that I talked about earlier, the bank there. And this building and that bank building, the brick were ordered at the same time and were shipped in here on rail. And so both of these buildings were put up about the same time, and they're very similar. They're pretty much identical. Except this one has the original brick at the top. This is Apple spray rig and sprayers at the Alta Vista orchards. Alta Vista orchards are, if you know where Stuarts Draft Elementary School now is, middle school, all of that area was orchard. The person standing there on the left, that's my grandfather. He ran the orchard there for over about 25 years. And that's the old horse-drawn spray rig. They had you could see over here, this is a water tower where they used to fill the spray tanks with water. And also they would go over to the spray garden, Barterbrook, and pump water out of the spring for the spray rigs during the spraying season. This is the apple orchard. This is the trees. You can see over here, that's the apple trees before they picked. Here's the apple trees after they picked. You can see all of these things are loaded with apples bent way over. Limbs are still bent here, but they're empty. And here's the guys sitting with all their apples that they've picked. Linda Vista. Linda Vista was another apple orchard in this area. Virginia was a fruit growing state. And as we mentioned earlier, the Alta Vista orchard was there. Linda Vista was an orchard there. That was there. That's up about Simon's Way, I think. Wasn't it?
It was up on Wilder Road because one of my property tax plats says Linda Vista.
Yeah,
on it.
Linda Vista.
Is that where the name Linda Vista Drive at Lake
That's where
Thomas
that
is?
comes from, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I'd be curious why they named it that I mean, you had Alta Vista, you had Linda Vista. Was there any other vistas around here you know
I don't know. Not that I know of, but
Yeah.
Buena, yeah, Buena Vista.
of? Yeah, Buena Vista, yeah.
And here's Valley Orchard. This is another orchard that was around. This is located, there's an individual right there that some of you may know or knew. This was John Brown. He taught school at Stuarts Draft for a number of years. He was brought in here to run the orchard. He was manager of the orchard. And this orchard, I think Valley View or Valley Orchard is what was Haley's orchard out there, still orchard out there at that particular John Haley's place.
Now, is this Mark Brown's granddaddy or John Warren Brown?
No, this is
Mark.
Mark's granddaddy.
Yeah, Jean was John's daughter, sent me this picture just this week. So we're continually adding to our story. Weaver Feed Company, O.L. Hockman and Son Grocery, Draft Grocery, Community Lunch, People's Bank, Vance Cut Rate, England Hardware, Corns Hardware. These were all what we refer to as downtown Stuarts Draft, basically between Wayne Avenue and the railroad track.
Now, what was Van's cut rate?
Vance Cut Rate was basically pretty much a drugstore. They had a lot of drugs, drugs, yeah, aspirin and that sort of stuff in there. But they also had a lunch counter and certainly ice cream and soda fountain type thing.
Was that right beside England Hardware?
Right beside of England
And
Hardware.
later on, when I was a kid, it was the pharmacy.
Yeah, it was a pharmacy, yeah.
Oh, so that was the old people's pharmacy?
The old
Oh,
people's
okay.
pharmacy, yes.
Oh, it was the best. Yeah, it was the best.
Van was a Forbes.
Van was a Forbes, yeah, that's exactly right, yeah,
And
Van
then-
was a Forbes.
And then I remember a Van Forbes.
Yeah.
That'd have been his,
That was his,
that was Bill's brother.
Bill's brother, yes, Dr. Forbes'
Was this
brother.
their daddy?
No,
No, it was
there was an aunt, Brad, that
Her
owned it.
Last name was Van
Van
Falstall.
Foss.
Van Foss.
But Helen was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell,
Then she worked for Dr. Bill.
yeah,
Yeah, had them big legs.
yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. I still remember the.
There was also Cliff's Garage, and a funeral home, Herbal Store, F.A. Car and Company, the Double Store was called, Village Inn Dairy, and in 1950, the Volunteer Fire Company was organized. Village Inn Dairy, O.C. Flory Farm, now Hershey Chocolate, was where Village Inn Dairy was located. Mr. Flory had basically dairy cattle. He raised, they had, of course, milk the cows. Had their own dairy there. They processed the milk, had their own milk bottles. As a matter of fact, I'm privileged enough to own a couple of them. So does Gary. Gene Kane's got a nice collection of all of the sizes of milk bottles that were at that time.
What about Eder? Was it start Stuarts Draft? Was it where Mitchell's was at?
I think Eder was there at one time. Yeah, Eder was there after Mitchell.
After
Yeah.
Mitchell.
After
And
Mitchell.
then they ended up in Waynesboro.
Right. When before Mr. Flory bought the farm, it was owned by the Alexanders. And Miss Mary Catherine Alexander, when O.C. Flory bought the farm, she was given lifetime rights to the farm. She was also had in those lifetime rights, and she was to get all the milk she could use in a year's time. Plus, she got a pig every year. Now, you tell me what the corporate lawyers in Hershey, Pennsylvania thought when they got that contract. Started looking into that deed. Mr. Harold Cook, who was the first plant manager down there, yes, Linda.
Here's a picture of the Flory house.
Oh, okay, she's got a picture of the Flory house. Okay, we'll look at that. Thank you.
Yeah,
But
I'd like a copy of that picture before you leave. I'm gonna take a picture with the camera.
anyway, Mr. Cook said that he told us when the lawyers at Hershey got with him and said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "Leave it to me. I'll take care of it." He said, "I worked with Ms. Alexander and we got it all worked out. There was no problem." And that was another thing Mr. Cook talked about was that memorial plaque that I mentioned that was on a farm here. That particular memorial plaque, the Basins got with Mr. Cook. They wanted to put that plaque on the farm where this Dr. Alexander Long had grown up. That was another hoop he said he had to jump through to get that to get that memorial plaque placed on the Hershey property down there. So that plaque is now on the Hershey property. If you drive in the main entrance to Hershey, it's off to the left, down towards the waste treatment tank that's down there. And it's in the ground, laid in the ground. There's about a 3x6 copper plate that, you can go in and look at it if you want to.
Randall, while we're talking about that big a farm, I'm sorry about that. While we're talking about the farm, when Hershey bought the farm, they took care of Mary Catherine Alexander. And at the grand opening, when they opened the plant, they had, most of the community leaders were invited, and they served refreshments. And Mary Catherine was allowed to sit with the CEO of Hershey. And that was a big part for her, that was a big deal. Frankly, it'd been a big deal for anybody. But anyway, he told her that if she was ever in Hershey, Pennsylvania, to come by his office. Well, she did. And she went in the office and was asked by the receptionist, could she help her? And she told him, yes, she wanted to see CEO. And the lady said, there is no way. She said, you call him and tell him who's here. And he came down and met her and took her back to his office.
That's so.
They took care of her.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, years ago, my wife and children went up to tour the Hershey Chocolate Museum, and I guess it's outside the plant there. And it was quite interesting to see, but at that time, the plant here was pretty new, and on one whole wall, it had Stuarts Draft all over it, and how proud they were of Stuarts Draft and their wonderful plant in Stuarts Draft. And I was like patting myself on the chest and saying, well, that's where I'm from. So yeah, it was really heartwarming to see that we meant that much to them.
I used to service Mary Catherine's car, and I'd go down and pick it up. She had a big old blue Oldsmobile, and she would always, and I would take my little boy with me some, Gary Lee, and she had a whole room full of Civil War stuff that she would take us in there and show us. Every time we went down there, she would go on service her Civil War room. Yeah.
I mentioned the fire company was organized in 1950, but look, here's a store, here's an ad from the Double Store. Staple and fancy groceries, dry goods and notions, gents ready-made clothing, furniture and floor covering, trunks, suitcases, handbags, hardware, a little bit of everything you can see in the store. This is in front of BBQB Blacksmith Shop that's right across the road from the old firehouse, which is now Jude Corn's basically veterinary business. But John Brown, and I showed you that picture where he was in was moved in here as manager of that particular orchard. He got this 1906 Wayne and restored it. It was a Model H, I believe it was. And he restored that thing, and this is just a postcard, a picture that was taken with that Wayne sitting in front of the old blacksmith shop. There's a fire company, the first fire trucks. You can see that in June the 7th, the fire company was formed with 47 people present. They agreed to assume the responsibility for paying for one of these 1939 fire trucks that's right here. This one specifically, that was the number one truck there. And you can see that over here, this is a receipt that where the Rutland Club had bought the truck for $525. As you can see, a identical truck was also purchased from the Forestry Service a year later for $700. You can see that the cost of fire equipment continued to go up. Well, let's look again. 1954, the first new truck to come to Stuarts Draft was a flood drive for a 1954 GMC with a John Beam high-pressure fog pump. And you can see there that on June 22nd, the paper announced that we had $2,000 to go to reach a goal, and on June the 24th at 10:10, the siren on top of the building sounded to announce the huge goal had been reached. Well, let's back. This is Uncle Johnny painting the thermometer that was in front of the firehouse, painting that to indicate that we've gone over our goal. Let's look a little bit at the other equipment. You can get more detailed information on the fire company, of course, on the fire company's website, sdvfc.org. But we purchased a Econoline van in 63, 66 Chevrolet four-wheel drive brush truck was purchased. That is still in use in the firehouse. 1970 Ford L900 was purchased, $25,000. 1975 Ford L900, another one to match the first one, $39,700. You can see they're going up in price. 1989 white GMC pumper, $139,600. American LaFrance ladder truck was donated by the Waynesboro Fire Company. We purchased an American LaFrance pumper in 1999. 2003, purchased a used 1993 GMC Utility 75 from Slater's Fire Equipment. That came out of North Carolina. 2002, we bought a tanker built by 4 guys. 2006, we sold the American LaFrance ladder truck to the Historical Society. Purchased a 2007 Ford F-250 for a response unit. This is when we were in the first responder business with the rescue squad. We still do a lot of response units with the rescue squad, but we're no longer a first responder unit as such, as far as medical services go. April 1st, 2012, we purchased a 2012 International four-wheel drive engine. You can see the purchase price, what that one was, $349,000. Purchased a US Ford F-50 chassis for this Utility 75. 2017, here we new Sutphen chassis with body by Custom Fire. And you can, like I said, you can get more information on our webpage. That particular truck sitting there like that's almost $750 million. So you can tell it doesn't take long for our equipment to run up. You can see what inflation does to us.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
The American LaFrance, you don't have a picture of that truck, do you?
I do, somewhere on the fire company's webpage,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Well, I didn't know if you had in your presentation.
No, I don't have.
Anyway,
I don't have a president.
I wish Bob Simmons would have been told about this meeting. He would have loved to have been here. But he told me here some time back on Facebook, the Waynesboro Fire Department ordered that big 100-foot ladder truck. And when they brought it into the Waynesboro yard on rail. And I think from what he described, this boxcar opened up at one end so you could drive a truck out, but the truck was loaded on the wrong way. And so they had to take the car all the way back to Shenandoah, turn it around and bring it back the right way so they could get their truck off of it. But then in the meanwhile, and you'll have to fill in the details here as I remembered, Waynesboro used this truck until they blew it up, right?
Yes.
And then they went and bought a new truck. In the meanwhile, Stuarts Draft was bantering around the idea of getting a ladder truck, and Waynesboro said, well, look, we'll give you the truck. You fix it up with the stipulation that if we ever need it, you'll be there to help us with your truck. And that's how we ended up with it.
Yeah, that's how Stuarts Draft ended up with it. There's a lot of stories that we can relate to you regarding the fire company, but that's pretty much in the fire company's presentation, so we'll do that at some other time. But we get down to downtown Stuarts Draft. You can see here's the white building I referred to as the bank building here. Beside of that, this building is no longer there, but you can see here's the community lunch. Right here was the post office. Community lunch was pretty much pool hall, wasn't it? And a beer joint.
Cam Love Group.
Yeah, Cam Love Road.
Okay, Larry, was this where your mom and dad told you had no business to be
No,
in?
their store was next door.
I'll show that story in a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
This is pretty much Main Street, and you see the sign Shaner's store there. That's Wayne Avenue that goes down there. This is 1946. You can see the visible gas pump sitting on the corner there of Engelman's Hardware. That was Engelman's Ace Hardware, well, it became Ace Hardware. And then the Vance Cut Rate was right beside of that, and they have Shaner's store there. And eventually the post office moved to this building right here.
Go back to that.
Oh, yeah, we need to go back to that one.
That's our granddaddy's car.
Yeah, that's our granddaddy Forbes's car. We called it the Chug Buggy. This is Main Street, around 1950. This car right here is Ms. Hockman's car. They lived in the big house that's located right there. This is downtown Stuarts Draft. This is on the west side of the street. Right here, this building is the Weaver Feed Store. Right here is Hockman's Grocery. Right here is Draft Grocery.
Now that's where mom and dad were,
Yeah,
where the Coca-Cola sign is.
yeah.
Okay.
And, this is, I was actually born in that building. Mom and dad lived in a two-room apartment in the back. And, so store is all I ever knew my whole life.
But that was a seedier place in Stuarts Draft, and I think Larry's mom and dad had told him never to go down there on any weekend.
Yeah. And then the next big building there is the community lunch, the post office, and all, as I mentioned, in the back building there. There's Corn's Hardware. Stuarts Draft Elementary School. This sits right there next to where the fire company now is. Of course, that's Rejoicing Life Church in front now, fire company behind it. But I want you to look at something. Look at the width of Draft Avenue or Main Street at that point in time. This building up until the high school when the high school was built has changed. But when Larry and I went to school, the first, second grades were down here, the third and fourth grades were on the second floor. Cafeteria and all was in the basement. We were in the third and fourth grades. I was in the third and fourth grades at that building. I was in Greenville up until that point in time.
I was in second grade when the new Stuarts Draft Elementary School, now Stump Elementary School, was built. And I remember picking up our desk out of this classroom, walking across the road and into Stump to put the furniture down for our first day of school.
How about that? This is the fourth grade Stuarts Draft Elementary School. This is the entire class. But there's the boys in that class. Louise Deal was the teacher. This is 1950-51. And there are two of us are in that picture. Two of us are here in this room today.
Now, what's his name? The Carnegie boys.
One
He's
right
right
there.
beside Larry, right?
One right there. Yeah, Sammy Carnegie.
Yeah, Sammy Carnegie and Larry are right side by side.
Like my daddy right there.
Yeah. Petey right beside Sammy.
Yeah, Petey's right beside Sammy.
Oh, that's
right
Petey there. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, I didn't know that.
Ain't he cute?
That's awesome.
I don't know what.
Yeah, you can see the names of all of the boys there. I can name all of the boys in the class at that point in time. This was Stuarts Draft High School in 1940. Here was the home ec building and the agriculture building. Home ec building is no longer there, but the agriculture building is still there. That's the clothes closet now.
Randall, where was the original high school?
High school,
Yeah, you said that was Stuarts Draft High School.
that's where the fire company and the Rejoicing Life Church is now.
Used to be the schoolhouse right here.
Yeah, it used
So
to be
that
school.
building was the high school.
That was a high school, yes.
So where's the elementary school?
It was right there beside it. It's been torn down. Yeah,
Okay, see, gotcha, okay.
that building has been torn down.
And that was before the high school.
That was before the high school was built here. When the high school was built, when that became the high school, pretty much, before, when this building was torn, this building remained in business till the high school was built where it is now. But this building then, well, let me go back. This building here became the 5th, 6th, and 7th grades, and the first through 4th grades were here. The 5th, 6th, and 7th grades were over here in this building.
6 and 7.
6th and 7th, okay, yeah, 6th and 7th.
Started out 5, 6, and 7 because I made the trip from 4th grade across the street back to fifth grade.
Back to fifth grade, yeah. Yeah,
Mr.
fifth grade was,
Mr. Newcomer taught fifth and sixth grade.
yeah, Joe Scott Howell taught Larry and I fifth grade in that particular building, yeah.
Joey House is my fifth grade.
Yeah. This is, in the agriculture building, this is a 1941 defense training class that was held in that particular building, back during the beginning of the war. You can see, here's the names of those individuals that were in that picture. Of course, the course was one of 3 offered in Augusta County. It was a national defense project to help people to learn to weld and to, you know, all sorts of things, plumbing and that sort of stuff. This building was known as Bradley's Garage. That became, you know, the Stuarts Draft Hatchery then, a little later on. Weaver Hatchery. They had incubators in here, they hatched chickens. Anybody have any guess as to how many chicks they hatched in a year's time? How many of you think you could hatch in a year's time?
Well, at 40,000 a month times 12, whatever that is.
Yeah. Gerald Suter finally told me one day, he said, 2 million chickens a year. 2 million a year.
Is that where Tree Street Sign Building is?
Yeah, yeah. Tree Street Sign Building is now in that particular, Tree Street Signs is now in that particular building. But, yeah, Gerald Suter has a lot of good information there because his father-in-law, of course, was Jason Weaver, and he worked there at the hatchery for a number of years. The hatchery had somebody on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so the phone for the firehouse was located in the hatchery. And so those people could answer the phone in the middle of the night and ring the fire alarm. And they did for a number of years. And of course, the phone was at, you know, several homes. Larry's dad had a phone. There was one in the store, one in Rounded Up with Johnny's, and there was no central dispatch system. Whoever got the call went to the firehouse and rang the alarm on top of the building. Mr. Cubey, yeah, Mr. Cubey's house had the phone too, yeah. This was Cliff's Garage, 1954. It was an SO station at that point in time. It became a Gulf station shortly thereafter. 2 years later, I think it became Gulf. This was Weaver Feed Store. Now we go to the corner. We talk about Weaver. Weaver had the feed store. They had the hatchery. Turned out 2 million chicks a year. And you want to know where all them chickens went? Well, he also had poultry processing plant that used to be the Rocky Hill Poultry Plant. It's now a junkyard, or Affordable Autos, I believe, is the official name of this building over here on 608 now. But anyway, that's when Rocky Hill Poultry Plant was in business, they were running about anywhere from 25 to 32 chicks a minute through that plant to slaughter them and package them and ship them out of here. Now, Mr. Weaver, when he had the building built, he used German prisoners of war labor that were up at Sharonda, and he would truck them from there over out here to help with construction of that particular building. And he said New York dressed them, what he called New York dressing of the chickens. That meant they take the feathers off of them, and they shipped them with the heads and the entrails and all of them to New York by rail car at that point in time.
Brandon, will you go back to the feed store just a minute?
Yeah.
It's still there.
Is that the feed store? This is
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's 1903.
Yeah, okay, that's 1903 there. That's possibly the feed store, yeah.
All right, tell me, hold on.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you a story, Miss Gertie Lowry, some of you may remember that name. It was a lady she was a cobbler. She did a lot of leather work and all. She used to come into the feed store and get her own feed. She had a horse and a buggy. She'd bring it in, get her feed. They'd bring it out, go load it for her. No, you won't, I'll load it. She reached out, pick up that 100-pound sack of feed, throw it up on that buggy, and away she'd go. She didn't want anybody helping her load the feed. We move up to this is the intersection of 340 and 608, or Draft Avenue and 340. This was one of the stations that was there. This is Mr. Thacker, Mr. Leighton Thacker here, standing right here. This particular station was changing over from Texaco to Esso this particular day that that picture was taken. There's another little station right down here. You can't make it out. That was Massey's station. That's now located where Dairy Queen is now located. This was Mr. Bayer. He was a caretaker in 1920 to 1930. This was a toll booth. In order to travel the Harrodsville Turnpike, you have to go through the toll booth here on, right behind the station there on 608. You have to go through the toll booth there and pay your toll to get to use the Harrodsville Turnpike.
How much was the toll?
I think it was 10 cents. My dad, I remember Daddy talking about driving the truck from the orchard, which was down located where the school is now, or the high school, middle school. He drove a truck with apples on it to the railroad station to be loaded on the cars to be shipped out. And I remember him talking about paying the toll, 10-cent toll to get through there with the truck so he could take the apples to the, down to the mill, down to the train station to be loaded.
That's interesting, Randall. Can I interject there? The Howardsville Turnpike, as near as I can tell, put Stuarts Draft on the map. When the railroad came through, the railroad put Howardsville Turnpike out of business.
Yeah, it did.
That house is still standing.
Yeah, this little house is still standing. It's not there on 340
No,
anymore.
it was moved in Rivermont, but it's still standing.
Yeah, it's out in Rivermont now. This is what the station looked like, or that corner looked like in 1950. The station, you can see, was changed. It was SO. Then it changed to Exxon. This is the corner where Kaiser Auto Parts is now located. That was another service station. This was Jim Harrison's station. This was also local beer joint.
Now, did it have
So
pool
we had-
tables in there too?
Huh?
Did they have pool tables in there?
Not to my, well, I don't know. They may have.
But no,
It's not the way they do that.
We weren't old enough to get in.
We weren't old enough to get in
We're
there.
not allowed to go there.
Well, when was it Shorty Corners? Was that Shorty Corners at one time?
No, SO was Shorty Corner.
Oh, okay.
Daddy bought it.
Before your dad?
Yeah, Daddy bought it from Shorty.
Was,
Yeah, but I'll go back to that. The Shorty Corner owned this particular station, or the property. He didn't own the property. The Otts owned the property. Shorty and his wife had a little trouble with the bottle.
Tootsie.
And, yeah, Tootsie. And, so for some reason or other, Shorty and his wife decided they were going to sell. They sold in the middle of the week. I mean, you'd think you'd sell it on, get rid of it on Saturday, close out the week, start a new week with somebody else. No, this happened on a Wednesday. Well, I was going to school, working for Shorty for that summer. And Shorty paid me for working Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Daddy took over on a Wednesday. And Daddy robbed a few piggy banks at all that house, I think, to get some change. But cashed my check, I think it was $26 and some few cents for working Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And that's what we opened up the station with that morning.
Oh, my God. That's
I
funny.
remember Daddy saying they had a total of $52 out of the
Yeah.
piggy banks from home and Randall's paycheck.
Now, the Thacker store, wasn't it right beside that?
No, it was that's the exact location.
That,
Yeah.
what was beside y'all's gas station when I was a little boy?
Okay, that,
No, Jim Massey.
Jim Massey was there. There was a house that was built out of the same brick that the station was built out of, and then there was a house there that Massey's owned, and they had the little station next to that that is now where the Dairy Queen is located.
I remember that building.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah,
operating.
Daddy had a car lot in there for a little
How
while.
many gas stations does Stuarts Draft need?
I don't know, but there were three gas stations on the corner there.
Yeah.
There were 2 hardware stores downtown.
Yeah.
There were 2 grocery stores downtown.
And it wasn't but 600 people.
Yeah, it wasn't 600 people.
Yeah.
And plus the fact that Cliff's Garage had gas pumps, Corn's Hardware had gas pumps, and Engelman's Hardware, you saw where they had that visible gas pump there. So everybody had a gas pump.
And, yeah, and 2 beer joints.
And 2 beer joints. Yeah. And in addition, plus the community lunch was downtown.
It was kind of weird.
It was 30. But, things have changed over the years at that intersection. I mean, look at the intersection today and see what's there. We'll show you a little bit more about that intersection. Remember, this is where City National Bank is now. Weaver Locker Plant. You can't read this. This is just a list of the local businesses that, when they had the local Stuarts Draft Business Association. This is Stuarts Draft Rescue Squad. It was organized in 1969, and you can go to their website and get details on their website. 64, H.K. Porter Company came, which is now Dimco. 1970s, Hollister came, Mastic and Alcoa. PT Components, now Rexnord came. In 82, Hershey Chocolate began. 1990, McKee Baking Company began. And that's kind of where we are today. It kind of brings us up to date as to where we are today. Simon has a group of pictures up here of different things. You know, we have, we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about the pictures. Stay around and hang around as long as you like and ask questions, or, you know, hey, if you have any pictures of interest or anything of interest about Stuarts Draft, let us know. We'll be glad to include it in our next presentation. Thank you.
Well, I got one more thing
All right,
I'd
go
like to
ahead,
say.
Simon.
Billy Coffee. Now I want to talk about you. I didn't know until we did the presentation down at the nursing home that you were Jonas Kanege's grandson, and that your mom was Sylvia. My mom talked very fondly of your mother. In fact, I think they were in the youth group together in the Amish church. Now, your grandfather is featured over here in this presentation here. And for those of you who didn't know Jonas Kanege, he's down here on this side. He owned Cisco Farms. Cisco Farms is not the Cisco Farms, or the name Cisco is not synonymous with what we associate Cisco with today. It was an apple orchard. And Jonas told me himself, he said when he moved down here from Belleville, Pennsylvania, they bought that farm. And the first year, I guess the first year or two, they had some really good apple crops. And he thought, well, hey, you know, it's a shame to see these apples go to waste. So he went out there all day long and picked a whole pickup load of apples, put them in crates, and took them to Waynesboro. And he sat down there with all the other apple vendors, and he tried to sell his apples. All day long, he didn't sell one apple. He had forgot that everybody else had apples too, because it was a good year. Jonas was an interesting character. Now, he also had a brother named Joe, which would be your great uncle. Joe was a lot of fun. He was a barrel of monkeys. But your grandfather, he was interesting too. He was an inventor of sorts. When he came up to work for my dad, he said, I just need he quit the dairy farm, he sold all that. I just need a place to go where I can work a few days at my leisure and leave and come back whenever I want to. And my dad said, well, yeah, hey, that'll work just fine. You can work in our shop. And so anyhow, Jonas invented his pancake machine up in our shop. We called it the pancake machine. He called it the flippin' Jenny. And what makes this special, the pancake machine after Jonas passed away disappeared. Nobody really seemed to know what happened to it until this year. I got a call from my friend Wesley Yoder. He said, you can't guess what I just found. He said, I was up in Belleville, Pennsylvania, and some of Jonas's relatives found that thing in Floyd County, Virginia. So they had it, it's my understanding, it's up in Belleville where Jonas is from, and they're trying to figure out how it works. But I do remember Jonas worked on that thing for quite a few years, trying to perfect it. And every time he thought he had it perfected, he would invite the neighbors in and he'd have a pancake fry, and then something would happen. I know one time the belt tore. It was a steel belt. And so Dad real quick went down there and welded that thing for him. And then another time he couldn't get the thing to flip the pancakes right. Instead it threw them clear across the machine. And so they ended up making the pancakes by hand. So he also helped invent the K&K unloader. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. But in the early 1970s, there was a group of brothers down in Amelia, Virginia. I can't remember what the name of that area is called, but anyhow, Amelia is their address. And they had invented this bottom silo unloader, and they called it a flail. They used a Caterpillar chain, hooked it on a big shaft, and put cutters on the end of it. and it worked real well if you didn't put the silage in too wet. So Jonas and my dad perfected that thing, and they were going for the big time. And they contacted the Harvestor silo company, and they was quite impressed with the design. And it was a working model, and had all the kinks out of it, and it seemed to be something that they were very, very interested in. So Jonas and my dad went out to, I think Illinois is where the plant was, somewhere out in that neck of the woods, the Midwest. And the Harvestor had already bought up all the equipment and tooling. They was ready to build this thing. And they got a letter from Badger. Well, what they had failed to remember was that when the Mast brothers invented this design, the technique, Badger came in and bought them out, because Badger also made top unloaders, and they didn't want the competition, and they shelved it. They didn't want to make the thing, they just shelved it. And so the Harvestor got a letter from the lawyer and said, if you make the first one, we'll see you in court. So Harvestor said, well, I guess that's not going to happen. And then one other thing, and Jonas is very involved in, and there's a song written about Jonas, by the way. If you look on my YouTube site, it's called Jonas, that was written in memory of him. But Jonas loved doing outreach work. He was very outreach. It's a wonder he wasn't a minister like yourself, but I guess that's why you are instead of him. But anyway, he loved going down to Haiti. And I think on one of his trips down in Haiti, somewhere down there, wherever, maybe it's down south in Central America, he had seen this guy that had invented a puff tweet popper. And they make puff tweet very much the same way as you make popcorn. Except this man had a small tank. It looked like a propane tank. Now, that's what Jonas thought it was. And so he came home and he was all excited. He said, you know what? He said, I think I can make puff tweet. That might be my next big business venture. So anyway, he was up there putting around in the shop, and he got this propane tank and cut the end of it off and put a lid on it to seal it, you know, and put a little bit of water in it and some some wheat, and then he took a torch to heat it, and he rolled it around and around and around, and then flipped the lid open, and what happens when it's under pressure, like it's like a steam engine, when it hits the air, it turns into puff tweet. Well, first couple times, nothing really big happened. It just kind of spit it out, you know, and nothing popped or anything. So he had to put a little bit more water, a little bit more heat to it, and then it got pretty strong. I mean, it started really spitting it out, way out, but it still didn't make puff tweets. So he got it up. I don't know how hot. He had no way of knowing how hot he had it. But anyhow, at one point he opened the lid and boom, he locked the light out of the shop. And next time he did it, a customer was coming in the shop. It scared the pants off of him. He thought he done had it. So my dad told him, he said, you know what, Jonas? He said, I think you better stop. He said, that thing looks pretty dangerous. So the puff tweet popper was put on hold, but the pancake machine ended up being a success. And one of my Facebook friends told me here just recently that thing made them a lot of money, because he would do these pancake fries for different people voluntarily there towards the end. And but then he died. I remember he spent $10,000 just to get the patent for that thing. And to think that it's sitting somewhere not doing anything is kind of sad. But anyhow, I wanted Billy to know that you come from good stock, and your church has a good pastor. God bless you.
Amen.
Simon, who was it? Wasn't it People Magazine that came in and did a thing on him?
There was a number of them, I think it did. Yeah.
With the bank barn in the back. Do you remember that?
That part I'm kind of vague on. I don't remember
People
all.
Magazine. It was somebody big.
Yeah.
Came in and he got it going. He actually made lunch for us.
Yeah.
Out there with the farm in the background. It's pretty cool.
So yeah, if you get a chance to find that pancake machine, bring it to Stuarts Draft.
I'll do it.
But as far as I know, it's some relative in Belleville that has it. Yeah, they picked it up. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. There's just a couple items that I feel like you need to be told. It always was a history or a mystery of why did the industries decide to come to Stuarts Draft. And it really and truly was very simple. We had Interstate 6481, we had railroad, and we had Mennonite Amish. And the Mennonite Amish community has high ethics,
Yes.
high work ethics, and high morals. And that's one of the main things that attracted industry here. Now, talking about industry, I can't help but tell this story. There was, and I'm not gonna call all the names, but Mr. B.B. Cubey, who was our blacksmith, in his latter years, he made a trip one morning with me to Richmond to pick up some things for Dad. And as we were down about Zion Crossroads, Mr. Cubey said, "Son, you know the little town that we live in?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "They ain't gonna amount to nothing until we have 5 funerals. Then she's gonna boom." And he was right. He was right. And one more little item, the picture of John Brown's car when we were viewing Petey's museum, we ran into John Brown's grandson, and they have found it, and it's coming home.
You talking about that blue car?
Yeah, the
The
blue car has been restored. When John's grandson got a hold of the car, it had the same problem that John had with it when he bought it. And so this Traxler boy has restored the thing and had it running. And I think he broke the crank in it again. But anyway, it's coming to Stuarts Draft. His mother, Jean, has called me a couple times and asked about putting it in the Fireman's Parade. So, hopefully it'll get here one of these years for the Stuarts Draft Fireman's Parade.
Well, and that's the next thing. If we have enough of these meetings, and maybe eventually Stuarts Draft will put together a historical society and we can start collecting things.
Any stories on John Warren Brown?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stories going around about everybody. We talked about a lot of different folks and all, but, Cracker Washington comes out, you saw a picture, and I was showing just the pictures rolling through there. You saw the honorary mayor of Cracker Washington. There's Cracker Washington, there's John Brown, there's also stories of John Warren Brown, and then there's, Ross Brown. Ross Brown, you saw a picture of him rolling through there. So you get us started on stories, we can keep on going. But thank you for showing up, and like I said, if you got any pictures or stories you'd like for us to share at some point in time, holler at us. We'll be glad to hear them. Thank you.